Hey, tell me if you've heard this before. The White Sox go into the top of the seventh with a lead, only to have the bullpen and the defense blow it. I'm sure you have, because for the 15th time this season, the White Sox blew another lead late in the game. Let's discuss where blowing all those leads should rank on things that frustrate you about this franchise next on Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of Southside Showdown, part of the Fan-Sided Network. You can check out my written content at southsideshowdown.com. And also, I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox and also follow or subscribe to the show on wherever you get your podcasts. Well, this season has gone as bad as you can imagine, and no one can say he or she has seen worse since the Sox have the worst record in franchise history through the official end of spring. Sox are 20-56 after they lost 5-3 to Houston yesterday in the series finale of a three-game set. The White Sox actually had a chance to win the series as starting pitcher Chris Flexen was outstanding on the mound, and the offense put up just enough runs to have a 3-1 lead entering the top of the seventh. Nearly a half hour later, the top of the frame ended, and the bullpen gave up that lead as the Astros scored 4 runs. The defense did its part to help give up the lead during that inning, too. 15 times in what keeps trending more and more toward a historically bad season, the bullpen and the defense have given away leads in the 7th inning or later. Let's discuss where this giving up leads should rank on the frustration power rankings in the first segment. Then let's talk about the keys / things to watch for when the Sox take on the Detroit Tigers in a weekend 3-game set. Finally, I love Tommy Pham, but he needs to be traded ASAP as the Sox just keep finding ways to screw up the progress of young players who could potentially man right field, which has been an eternal problem in the lineup for almost 15 years. And I want to wrap up the show on that. Today's episode of Locked On White Sox is brought to you by Tax Network USA. Did you know that it's never too late to resolve your tax issues with the IRS? Don't wait. Reduce your tax debt and get help from a team of licensed tax professionals. Call 1-800-549-1000. Again, that's 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/locked-on. Now, you and I might rank our frustrations differently, but blowing leads is not one that I'm going to put at number one on my power rankings of things that are driving me nuts about the White Sox. And Jerry Reinsdorf, that's just a whole nother ranking. We know he's the most frustrating owner in all of baseball. And losing, that's not even in my top 5, as the Sox were expected to lose this season. This was about gathering data on players that could help the team in the future. And they're not doing that right now. But I'm going to put that process second, and I'll tell you why in a moment. The clear number one frustrating part of the season is that Pedro Grifol is still the manager. You then put that poor how we're using young players versus veterans next. The bad defense when it was supposed to be upgraded in the offseason third. And then the bullpen giving up leads like it's charity. That's fourth, followed by an offense that just cannot put teams away. And like I said, Jerry Reinsdorf, he's his own separate ranking. Like that's just assumed. But in the now, in the what is frustrating me here and now about this team, is Pedro Grifol is still the manager. And I've talked extensively on shows that he should have been fired months ago. And it also just shows how no one is truly being held accountable for how this season is being historically awful. And again, maybe I should change the wording to, instead, number one of what is frustrating me about the season right now is nobody is being held accountable for the disaster of this season. Grifol is still running the clubhouse. the lineup card, and making the bullpen decisions because the belief of ownership is this is not entirely his fault. And sure, Chris Getz put this team together, but he did so partly to match the vision of what Grifol thinks a team needs to do to win. They need to play fast. Guess what? It also created a talent deficient team that can't hit home runs in a homer friendly ballpark. They can't execute his fast acronym. And Grifol is clearly a roving minor league instructor posing as a big league manager. His decisions and his lineups are costing the Sox wins, yet he's still in charge because no one needs to be held accountable for this. Okay, well, Tim Hill, Davey Garcia, Brad Keller, and Brian Shaw, they were held accountable as they were DFA'd. But 3 of those guys are veterans that are not very good anymore, so not exactly holding people's feet to the fire for being this bad. And at the very least, firing Grifol would at least set a standard that being this awful is just unacceptable. It's just not. Keeping Grifol around sends the message that being this bad is acceptable. It's fine. Oh, and there's another example of players starting to tune him out that occurred yesterday. During a replay challenge in the 7th inning, Pedro Grifol asked reliever Justin Anderson to toss some warm-up pitches, according to the TV broadcast, because a clear challenge on a hit-by pitch that should have been overturned within 30 seconds turned out to be like 5 minutes. Well, Anderson didn't, and next pitch, ball 4 with bases loaded. The poor process of how this team is using its young players in a lost season is also just maddening, and I'm going to discuss it more in the 3rd segment. But the front office and Grifol are typically going with veteran players who do not add a lot of value to winning. The Sox have just 3 players with an F4 above 1. Yet, the Sox keep rolling out these guys when they should be using this time to give big league experience to younger players to see if they can be part of the next competitive team. Maybe that's why Chris Getz has no idea when this team will be competitive, because he keeps playing bad veteran players. And sure, Paul DeJong, he's taken his assignment to boost his trade value seriously. But otherwise, here's a prime example. Michael Soroka is still on the 26-man roster, while rookie Jordan Leisure, he ran into some adversity, but he gets demoted. Soroka gets infinite patience while Leisure has to ride the bus in Charlotte, is basically what has been going on lately. And I get that there's a whole second half after the trade deadline for younger players to get playing time, but it's still a waste of time. Mike Clevenger does not need to be pitching for the White Sox when they have Jonathan Cannon and Nick Nastarini's development that is just way more important. And Chris Flexen, he's been solid, but he too has took away innings from Cannon and Nastarini's development in the names of being showcased for other teams. And the value that the Sox have for guys like Clevenger and Flexen, I think, are just totally inflated. Flexen's been pitching solid, but again, he's only going to yield you nothing more than a lottery scratch-off prospect now. And that was going to be the same 2 weeks ago. And the focus on the offseason was to upgrade the defense. Well, according to fieldingbible.com, the Sox are dead last in defensive runs saved with a minus 52. I mean, as Bernstein and Holmes pointed out on their show on 670 Score, all teams have to do is just put the ball in play, and they got a chance to get on base with how bad this defense is. And it happened yesterday. Danny Mandek had a chance to turn an inning double play in the 7th to at least keep the game tied, but he threw the ball in the dirt to first base. Vaughn could not scoop it up. Inning continues. Lenine Sosa, throwing error, also kept that 7th inning going. The bad defense is a sign that Chris Getz might not be up to this job as GM, especially since upgrading the defense was his priority in the offseason, and it's still the same gosh-awful defense. And you want to know how bad it's gotten? Luis Robert Jr. dropped an easy fly ball, and he dropped it looking like a blooper reel. I mean, it was a routine fly ball catch, and he looked like a little leaguer out there. The bullpen bowling games, yeah, it stinks to see this. Because let's be generous. Let's say the Sox only have blown 5 of those leads. They're 30-46. Now, not great. It's still bad, but maybe it's fun bad, not historically bad. And again, it's also an indictment on Getz since he kept focusing on bringing in former Kansas City Royals, especially to the bullpen. But at least he's not allocating resources to the bullpen, like his predecessor did. You only got so many budget dollars. You shouldn't be wasting it on bullpen pitchers. And the Sox could avoid these blown leads if the offense just found ways to pile on runs. They're bad at hitting with they're bad at hitting with runners in scoring position. They're bad at running the bases. And this team can't win on the margins. And it was designed to win on the margins in the first place. And even worse, the Sox faced a Astros pitcher who should be a reliever and just keeps issuing walks. And they only put up 3 runs. Well, on to the next series as the Sox traveled to Detroit to face their division rival, the Tigers. Let's go over what to watch for / keys in that series next on Locked On White Sox. With Stitch Fix, you get a stylist who understands your style, size, and budget. They do all the shopping for you. It's the easiest way to update your wardrobe this season. Easily upgrade your wardrobe this year with a professional stylist that helps you find new, on-trend favorites that will work for you. And it sounds like I need to sign up for Stitch Fix, as my wardrobe still consists of cargo shorts and t-shirts and hoodies of my sports teams. Hey, I am comfortable, but it does not always impress my wife, and I still need to look nice at church on Sundays, and well, I just have been rocking the same polo. Time to step up my game. Sounds like Stitch Fix makes it all so easy, and what I like about them is I don't like to shop, and they can save me and you that time and effort. Plus, I could get outfits that make me look and feel really good. Style that makes you feel as good as you look. Now's the best time to get started at stitchfix.com/MLB and get $100 off. That's $25 off your first 4 fixes for limited time only. That's stitchfix.com/MLB for $100 off. Stitchfix.com/MLB. Must redeem within 7 days of sign up. Offer does not include kids fixes. And are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest sports stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And the White Sox start a 3-game road weekend series against the AL Central Division rival, the Detroit Tigers. First pitch is at 5:40 p.m. Central. Catch every pitch of the White Sox hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search White Sox. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter, and thank you for making the show your first listen. Again, lots of great White Sox podcasts out there. Just ask that you listen to me first. And make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox. Also follow or subscribe to the show on wherever you get your podcasts. And also, if you got a topic idea you want me to discuss, email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Just don't be a troll. And yes, I know my earbud keeps popping out, so I keep pointing to my ear. I'm trying to be comfortable. So you don't need to email me about that. But in this world of Twitter and anger, hey, you and I can be civil. It's okay to disagree or even agree, but have a modification. Just be respectful. World would be a lot better place if everybody was just respectful. Anyways, this series with the Tigers is actually huge for the White Sox for 2 reasons. And it involves rookie pitchers Drew Thorpe and Jonathan Cannon. Thorpe, the Sox' second best pitching prospect, he starts tomorrow. His first start, he showed his floor immediately as he pitched a solid game. His second start, he showed off all the concerns about his stuff as he could not command his pitches and he got rocked by the Diamondbacks. This start, he has to be more like what you and I saw in Seattle and nowhere close to what was on display in Arizona. And the biggest reason is if he struggles, the front office's track record is to send a rookie pitcher back to the minors. And while that's not the end of the world, as I discussed in the prior segment, the process of deploying players should be getting younger players playing time to assess future contributions. And with Clevenger on his way back from an injury, there's a good chance that if Thorpe stinks, he's on his way back to either AA or AAA. And yes, I'll admit, I would rather see Thorpe every 5 days than Mike Clevenger. I fully got my bias, but again, I've laid that out on many shows. Cannon, he's been outstanding through 18 and 2/3 innings since returning from his string of 2 or 3 bad starts. 2 of the 3 bad starts he had when he debuted. And then he got demoted, only to return recently. Lot to follow there, I know. But you want to see him continue to be somewhere between good and outstanding for 3 reasons. One, it shows the organization can actually draft and develop pitching. So that is the only hope you and I have right now that the Sox will get back to being competitive, as they have all those young starting pitching arms in the minors. 2, gives the Sox some cover for having a good pitcher once Eric Fetty is traded. And 3, the organization trades Garrett Crochet. Then the consolation is you and I know that they at least have another dude who is worth watching. And Cannon is getting close to stud status and must-see pitch status, especially how he's just been so good over his last 2 outings. All right, so other things to watch for / keys. The Sox need to avoid being the get-right team for a division rival. The Tigers are 2-10 over the last 12 games, and the Sox just love to be that get-right team. Houston was struggling. Get right. Although, hey, at least the Sox avoided being the first team that Houston swept. Now, probably not going to be a ton of offense in this series, as both teams' lineups are in the bottom 10 in most offensive categories, with the Sox being dead last. Pitching, the Tigers are in the middle. They're a middle-of-the-road pitching staff, as they're 13th in the league in team ERA, and they are just 2 spots ahead of the Sox in fielding percentage, and the Sox are dead last there. And if the Sox want to avoid being historically bad, they need to get some wins here, as next week it is the Los Angeles Dodgers for 3 games and then a makeup game against the Braves. And then finally, this 39-game brutal stretch of schedule is thankfully over, and it has gone as bad as you and I can possibly imagine. Now, the Sox are actually 4-3 against the Guardians, but against the rest of the division, they're just 1-16. So again, a chance to maybe pick up some wins in the division for moral support, because it doesn't matter. The Sox are not even in this race. They're not even close. But hey, maybe they can just drag the Tigers, keep dragging the Tigers down in the misery index. Okay, so Oscar Colas, he's been sitting on the bench for a week since Tommy Pham and Andrew Benintendi returned from the IL. And Grifol addressed that, and his comments is another example of the Sox failing young players they deem to be the future in this eternal lineup problem in right field. I'll discuss that next on Locked On White Sox. Here on Locked On White Sox, we pride ourselves on getting you the latest news for your team, whether it's the offseason, the draft, spring training, or the playoffs. It's year-round. You know what else is year-round? Collection season. Just because tax season is over doesn't mean the IRS will stop coming after you for unfiled taxes. The IRS can garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, and even seize your property. Don't let the IRS target you. Let the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. Come to think of it, I got some 1099 income I'm going to need to file correctly this year, plus I file it jointly. So calling Tax Network USA is on my list of things to do, since I have no clue what I'm doing there, and the sources I've used for help in the past, they still have not gotten back to me. With over 14 years of experience and an A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning, or finally hit that parlay this season and need help correctly filing, call 1-800-549-1000, 1-800-549-1000, or visit tnusa.com/lockedon. See the link in this episode description below. And the White Sox start a 3-game road weekend series against the AL Central Division rival, the Detroit Tigers. First pitch is at 5:40 p.m. Central. Catch every pitch of the White Sox hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search White Sox. Welcome back into Lockdown White Sox. I am your host, Todd Welter. Thank you for sticking with me this far. Always love you everydayers. And again, I'm sorry to you everydayers. I got to get some new headphones. This earbud in my right just keeps popping out and it's driving me nuts. And I'm sure it's driving you nuts to see me go boop, boop. For those that are watching on YouTube, I point to my ear a lot. If you're on a podcast, man, you could care less. All right, the White Sox are still looking for an everyday right fielder since Jermaine Dye gave up baseball. And that was about 15 years ago. The previous front office thought they had the solution in Oscar Colas, just like they thought they had in Nomar Mazara and and Avi Garcia and Dion Viciedo. We could just keep running down the list. But Colas, just like the list, initially failed. He was basically banished to the minors by Pedro Grifol, but he was called up recently after Benintendi and Pham went on the IL and showed some promise that he can salvage his career. But now he's back to the bench since both are back. Dominic Fletcher, he was supposed to be the starting everyday right fielder at the beginning of the season, and he got like 3 weeks before he was demoted. Corey Julks was acquired in a trade after he was designated for assignment by the Astros. Came to the Sox and he got himself on a heater, but he kept getting mixed in and out of the lineup to accommodate Benintendi and Pham. And now the heater is worn off. Zach DeLoach, he was another young player battling for the starting spot in spring training, and he's blocked by these veterans in Pham and Benintendi. Now, I love Tommy Pham. I even wrote on Southside Showdown 3 reasons why you should appreciate Tommy Pham. And I get money is dictating Benintendi's playing time, but what Pedro had to say about Colas going back to the bench goes back to what I was talking about in the first segment. It is poor process of choosing veterans over young players. Chicago Sun-Times beat reporter Daryl Van Schouwen had this in his notebook today. It started out, it's the second section, Colas. Squeezed out of playing time by the return from the injured list of Benintendi, Oscar Colas hasn't started in a week. Could be ticketed for a return to AAA Charlotte when designated hitter Eloy Jimenez, hamstring strain, is expected to return from the injured list next week. Colas is 9 for 25 with 2 walks in his last 9 games. His approach has been more disciplined, but he has no extra base hits. Quote, he works extremely hard. He's doing everything he can to stay sharp, Grifol said. He can't do this long term. If an opportunity doesn't present itself in the near future, then it's obviously more beneficial for him to go get at bats, end quote. But one way Colas can get back into the lineup to see if he can start hitting extra base hits, because now that's the next thing he needs to do. He's shown he has plate discipline. Now it's mixing in hitting doubles, hitting home runs. Is the Sox need to trade Tommy Pham immediately. And that's why Pham was brought here in the first place, to be traded. Well, and also help the clubhouse culture. But he's done that. Trade him. It's going to stink to not see Tommy Pham's professional bat in the lineup. I'm prepared. Hopefully you are. And New York Post and Odyssey baseball insider John Heyman, he says, for example, the Royals and other teams are interested in Pham. He specifically mentioned the Royals. Now, I get it. It's going to be hard to see Tommy maybe on a division rival. But at this point, just trade Tommy Pham because now he's blocking somebody that is younger, that has some upside. And I don't know if Oscar Colas is going to be the answer in right field. But I'd like to see, can he redeem himself? And Pham's trade value is not going to get any higher. His trade value right now is worth a low A or rookie ball prospect with a high ceiling. It is what the market determined last year. That's what the Mets got when they traded him to Arizona. They got an 18-year-old high ceiling prospect, basically a lottery scratch off. And I don't think any team is going to go above that because that's all you got to do is cite. It's not like Tommy Pham has magically become an all-star. He's been a solid professional bat who's a good clubhouse presence. Just don't cross him when it comes to fantasy football. But if you trade Pham now, you get Cole lost the opportunity because he still has upside. You could see the progress. Last year he was this just free swinging freelancer, basically, going into business for himself, not hitting the cutoff man, not playing disciplined. He gets banished to AAA. And you know what he did? He got better. His at-bats have gotten better. Yes, they've been 9 singles. So you want to see more power. You want to see him driving the ball. I get that. And maybe him trying to be disciplined is factoring into, hey, I just got to make contact. And I get it. And that's a sign of development. Now the next step is when you make contact, drive it and launch it. But he definitely has the talent to finally solve this right field problem that has been a problem for the organization for, 15 years. But he can't get better on the bench. And you can't determine what he's going to do in AAA. Again, it's wasting time. And I get it. You're going to eventually trade Pham. But it's just wasting more time. Now, to be fair, a lot of teams are focusing in on the draft. But if you already know that Pham is going to get you just basically a scratch off, and the Royals are saying, hey, I'll give you this guy, take it. It's better in the long run to just take the deal. And again, I love Tommy Pham. Gonna miss him. They should have had him on the 2022 team. But the future and getting more data points on who can help this team get back to being good is more important. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. But before I go, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest sports stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I'll be back on Monday to talk about how the weekend series shook out and give you another minor league report, as I always do on Mondays. Also, I got James Fox from Future Sox scheduled to be on the show again on Tuesday to talk about how the MLB Combine went. And make sure to subscribe to the YouTube page at Locked On White Sox, or follow or subscribe to the show on wherever you get your podcasts. Also, feel free to leave comments about today's topics regarding the frustration power rankings, what to watch for /keys in the upcoming Detroit series, and the continued poor process of playing vets in right field over younger players. You can leave them on the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at Todd J. Dub, or Locked On White or Locked On Sox, or email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. See you Monday.